Let's talk about framing up interviews so that they look professional. There are a few simple rules you can follow that will make it at least always look good. We're going to talk about eyeline, the rule of thirds, looking space, and blocking where you put your interview subject. And to help us, we've got Leo. Hello, Leo. Say hello.
Hello, Leo.
So the first thing we need to decide is how high we're going to put the camera. And unless you're trying to make some sort of point, the answer is generally eye height for your subject. So we don't want to be looking at their bald spot or staring up their nose. So the problem with shooting down at people is it makes them look like they're a naughty school child who's being told off. And if you film up at them, it makes them look terrifying. So we want the interview to feel as though we're a third person at a table while two other people are having a chat and we're listening in. And that means you have the camera and the interviewee at the same height. The interviewer should be at the same height as well. So if I were to conduct the interview from up here, if you look at me, Leo, that doesn't look as though the camera is participating in a conversation between two other people. It looks as though he's looking away. So what we need to do is make sure that I'm at the same sort of height as Leo. And now when he looks at me while I'm interviewing him, it'll look naturally as if we're all at the same level. So a great guideline to helping you compose the shots is something called the rule of thirds that you've probably heard of from photography or art. So you start by splitting your image into 3 equal parts horizontally and vertically. And these intersecting points where the lines meet each other are where our eyes are most drawn when looking at an image. So these are indicators of where we should place points of interest, such as Leo's eyes. So what works well? The bottom thirds don't work very well. That just looks a bit strange, as if there's something more interesting going on in the background than Leo. In this unusual case of a black backdrop, not true. So I'm going to put Leo's eye that's nearest the edge of the frame onto one of those intersecting thirds lines at the top of the screen. And you can see that looks very natural. And you can see if I put it just a little bit too high or a little bit too low, it looks a bit unnatural. You'll notice that by putting Leo on that side of the screen, on those intersecting thirds lines, we've given him looking space as if he's looking at the person off the camera interviewing him on that side. But if I move it so that he's on the other thirds line, that looks a bit strange for an interview. Maybe it makes him look reflective, as if he's remembering something, having a bit of a mood. There might be a place in an interview where that's quite a good way of framing up, but it's making a point. So unless you want to make a point, I think you probably want to frame him up with the eye that's nearest the edge of the frame on the thirds line and some looking space in front of him. So if you were filming two people having a conversation, they would appear on opposite sides of the frame as if you were looking between two people in real life who were talking. And that goes for documentary or corporate films where you're intercutting interviews as well. If you remember to change which direction people are looking from one interview to another, then the documentary feels as though it's a lot of experts having a conversation with each other, even though they weren't in the room at the same time. And let's look what happens if you don't remember to change the side. You end up with a situation where one person's face is magically replaced by another. Last of all, let's talk about where you put your interview subject in the room. We're often met with rather aesthetically challenging office spaces and other glum places to shoot interviews. And there's something you see quite often that I'm going to suggest that you don't do. Putting your subject up against the wall, despite how lovely the wall might be, does make it feel a little bit like a hostage video. Try making the most of the space in the room you're in. Depth looks great for backgrounds because if you're focusing on the person, the background will be more out of focus the further away it is. Doing this will create a nice soft background image, so move your subject away from the background. So to wrap up, we want to remember to keep the camera at eye height for the interviewee and the interviewer at that height as well. We want to make sure we've placed the subject on a thirds line using the rule of thirds, with plenty of looking space in front of them, not behind them. And lastly, we want to make sure that we set the interview up so that there is a nice bit of space between the subject and the background so it doesn't look like a mugshot.